Okay, guys, it is that time of year. The NHL playoffs are about to begin, and I'm going to run another community NHL playoff bracket challenge. Just like last year, the winner received a copy of NHL 22 at launch for the console of their choosing. We are going to run it back. The winner of this year's bracket challenge will receive a copy of NHL 23 at launch of the game for the console of their choosing. If you want to join, just go down to the link down below, or you can join the Discord or on stream, anything like that. Just make sure that you have your bracket done before the playoffs start. Now, I'm not going to lie, I hate making these videos. They are 100% opinion, and obviously, I'm going to be wrong. Last year, I had the Toronto Maple Leafs winning the Cup because I really thought that they would get out of that weak Canadian playoff format and actually go on a run. I had them losing to Tampa Bay, so it's not like I was completely way off. But nonetheless, sports is sports. So, in the comments, if you fight me like I'm holding on to my picks like they are gospel, I am just gonna laugh at you. All right, let's get into it. So 5 seconds into this video, I'm gonna get some random Nashville Predator fan, but Sweeves, it's the playoffs and the regular season stats don't matter, and Colorado's really never done anything. Like, we are gonna start at the top of the Western Conference with the Colorado Avalanche. Now, they are gonna take on the Nashville Predators, who, all power to them, have done an amazing job actually making the playoffs. At the beginning of the year, they looked like they were sort of rebuilding. It didn't really look like they had any sort of shot at really even making the playoffs, to be honest with you. But they had a really strong season. Roman Josi dragged them to the playoffs. I've watched a few Nashville Predator games this year, whether it be against the Sharks or just betting on them, and it is wild to see how much he breaks the puck out, carries it in the offensive zone. It all goes through Roman Josi. It looks a lot like Erik Karlsson, and had he not played on Nashville, he'd be getting way more attention than he already is. Obviously, to you guys, you are knowledgeable hockey fans, so you know, but maybe the more casual viewer, Roman Josi is just a treat to watch. You combine that with the 40-goal season from Matt Duchene, which is absurd. He's got a 20% shooting percentage. So if you were to bet if he touches 30 next year, I honestly think that he's probably closer to, his career average of like 25. But 40 goals from Matt Duchene is crazy. And then obviously UC Saros, who's had a great season, but he is now out 4 to 6 weeks. So the biggest factor for Nashville was Saros. That was probably where they were going to end their back end, where they were going to try and succeed against Colorado, but it is going to be awfully difficult. Colorado is Colorado. Their top players get injured, and it all seems to just kind of fall apart as the playoffs go along. I don't really see how they lose this one, however. This one is a pretty clear-cut choice for me. If anyone picks Nashville and they win, lottery ticket stuff. That's incredible. But nonetheless, this is probably the easiest pick, if not in the Western Conference, of the whole playoffs this year. All right, on to Minnesota and St. Louis. This is a very even series, in my opinion. I think that a lot of the Minnesota players that are signed there know what happens next year with the Suter and Parise contracts. They are going to have about $15 million in dead cap, and I don't see how any shot that the Minnesota Wild or any team could win a Stanley Cup or contend for one with $15 million right off the top. So this is a very important year for them. Obviously, they are carried by Kaprizov. I don't know if there's another franchise in the West, at least, that is carried by one player more than Kaprizov and the Minnesota Wild. On the other hand, St. Louis, I feel like a lot of people have never really looked at St. Louis's stats and how they've played or watched the St. Louis game. 9 20 goal scorers and 8 players that have over 50 points. That is a relentless, couple of lines that they could just throw over. The goaltending is going to be a big question. Husso and Binnington. Husso's had a much better season, but if he falters even a little bit, obviously St. Louis could probably fall back on their Stanley Cup winning goaltender. I think the obvious pick here, or for a lot of people, is Minnesota. I don't feel that. I mean, maybe it's because I'm a Sharks fan and I've seen how they play against St. Louis, but I'm going to pick St. Louis here. I think that they just have a really, really balanced lineup and a lot of playoff experience. This one will go. That's a toss-up, though. I don't really have any confidence, like 50-50. Next up on the Pacific, we've got Calgary and Dallas. And, man, Dallas just goes to show how weak the Western Conference is. Like I mentioned early on, I think this is the weakest Western Conference, and the Dallas Stars kind of embody that. 2.83 goals a game. They actually give up more than they score. 2.99 goals against. Calgary looks like a perfect playoff team. They are coached well. They are hard and heavy to play against. They've got a great top line with 340 goal scorers. I don't see how Dallas can extend this series at all. I think Calgary gets on a roll. Dallas is going to have to win a couple in overtime, and maybe that does happen. But I really don't see how Calgary doesn't move on here. They've really built a good playoff team. Not to mention Markstrom and Ned, who's had just an incredible year. And then lastly, we've got Edmonton and LA. And what's crazy to me, at the beginning of the year, a lot of people asked me what I thought about LA. Obviously, as a Sharks fan, I don't like them, but that's to be expected. I really thought that they were kind of a polarizing team. I thought that if their prospects hit, and they have a lot of them, they have the best prospect pool in the NHL. If their prospects all hit, they would make the playoffs because the Pacific is so weak. Their prospects didn't hit, and they still made the playoffs. Like it's wild when you go down and look at Velarde and Byfield and all their prospects that helped out this year. It wasn't them that got them there. It was Kopitar, Deneau, Doughty, and Doughty's out. So, Kings fans, in a couple years, you're probably going to lead the Western Conference, but it isn't this year. Edmonton is going to get a great draw here. If Edmonton does not move on to the second round, I feel awful for McDavid and Draisaitl, because it's probably not going to happen if they cannot beat this LA team, because it's only going to get more difficult over the next couple years. All right, so now to pick the games that it'll happen in. Without Saros, Nashville, I would be stunned if they win one. I'm going to go with a sweep in Colorado there. Calgary and Dallas, like I said, I think there might be some overtime games that happen. I'll go in 5 here. Minnesota and St. Louis, 7. I don't see how it's not, unless Kaprizov just goes off. But yeah, I'll say 7 games there. And then Edmonton and LA, I will say Edmonton in 6, because Mike Smith is just old. All right, so that would give us a second round of Colorado and St. Louis. Rematch from, I believe, last year where Colorado swept. Again, this is just Colorado's best shot at winning a cup, or at least winning the Western Conference. They are the clear class of the Western Conference, and they have a really easy, they'll never have an easier route, in my opinion, so they'll move on there to the Western Conference. A Battle of Alberta is going to be super fun to watch, so I really, really hope this happens just for the playoffs and hockey fans. But Edmonton, you are going to see what happens when you run up against a team that's built for the playoffs and not just carried by 2 players, essentially. And they need a goaltender in the offseason. So I will go Calgary, as they just look like they are going to be extremely tough to beat. I will say this, that Colorado and Calgary, if that is the series that happens, I could see Calgary pushing Colorado, just because that is going to be a very, very tough team to play against. And Colorado always gets injured. If any of their top players go down, they are deep, but I just feel like if McKinnon, Rantanen, Landeskog, Makar, if any of them get hurt, it might be Calgary, but I'm going to say Colorado. If it is not Colorado this year, I don't think you're going to get a shot at it. They are in trouble when that McKinnon contract comes up, and they aren't going to get an easier road than this one. All right, guys, out of the Eastern Conference, at the top, we've got Florida versus Washington, and Washington almost came back and passed Pittsburgh, which would have been one of the best races to get to, because the loser gets Florida, the winner gets the New York Rangers, and we'll talk about my thoughts on the Rangers in just a little bit. But we've got Florida and Washington, if you look at their statistical performance from a player standpoint, Ovechkin has 50 and 90 points. That's incredible. They only have 3 goal scorers, Ovechkin included, that have more than 20 goals. Florida is the best team in the NHL in terms of the playoffs. They are built not just for the regular season with a bunch of top-end players like Toronto. They are built with heavy playoff guys that are going to be really fun to watch. In all honesty, I think if Ekblad doesn't get hurt last year, the way Florida played against Tampa, I honestly think Florida might have knocked out Tampa last year. That being said, if everyone stays healthy, Florida looks like a wagon. They look like what their point production says, to 122 points this season, 4.14 goals a game, and 2.86 goals against. Now, in net is probably their only weakness if they have one. But man, that Giroux trade, Huberdeau, Barkov, Ekblad, Weegar, not only that, like, they play heavy. Mason Marchment, you've got Gudis. Like, it's going to be really tough to go a full 7-game series against the Florida Panthers, which, as someone who's over 30 years old, just sounds so weird to say. All right, on to Toronto and the Lightning. Now, I was born in Southern Ontario. I've always loved the Leafs before I actually watched better hockey with the San Jose Sharks in the early 2000s. That being said, it can't happen again. Like, there has been no team impacted by Bettman's very, very dumb, like, division-based playoff system than the Toronto Maple Leafs. Every year, they go up against someone who could go to the conference final based on just points alone, and their reward for getting 113 points this season is the 2-time Stanley Cup defending champions, and they have 108 points. It's not like they just snuck in. In net, a huge discrepancy. Like, Toronto outscores their problems. I would be willing to bet that Campbell doesn't finish the series, possibly. Like, that would be a decent prop bet. Vasilevsky on their side. I honestly think that Toronto has a very good matchup with Tampa because of, like, the skill aspect. Toronto's got to get mad. That 8-1 loss, and I know people are going to point that out in the comments, I actually think that was a good thing for the Leafs, because at the end of that game, everyone got pissed off. And throughout this whole run with Matthews and Marner, every time in the playoffs, they get down by a goal and they just look down the bench for someone to go do something. No one gets mad. And I really think they've just had enough. But man, like, if they finish first and they got to take on Washington, like, if they finished ahead of Florida, easy. Like, I don't see any way that Toronto doesn't win that series. But good Lord, Tampa is going to be awfully tough to... Tampa has also played, I mean, you have to factor this in, way too much hockey. Not only did they win 2 Stanley Cups in a row, meaning that they went the full distance 2 years in a row, they did it in 8 months. People forget about that. COVID knocked out that 2020 season, and they won 2 Cups in 8 months. That is a lot of hockey. So, I don't think, spoiler alert, Tampa goes far. I am going to pick the Leafs here, because I want to will it into existence. It is going to be an ESPN 30-30, or 30 for 30, if Toronto loses this. Because this has got to be the best team to never get out of the first round. And if this happens, and man, I just want to see it. I want to see Toronto in the second round. All right, Toronto's moving on. I have no faith in that. All right, next up, we've got Carolina and Boston. I feel like Carolina's a team that no one talks about. Legitimately no one. Everyone literally just forgets that Carolina is there. So I apologize, Canes fans. 116 points for them. Great season. 107 for Boston. For whatever reason, I'm a Red Sox and Patriots fan, but I can't stand the Boston Bruins, so I'm going to try and keep my bias aside. I think they're extremely top-heavy, and when you watch them play, what's so fascinating is that Bergeron, Marchand, and Pasternak in the playoffs, you automatically pencil in a goal from one of them. Like, you go into each game knowing that the Bruins are going to have one goal from one of them. They might be the most consistent playoff scorers, like, of the last 20, 30 years because of how good they are in the postseason. Like, they are so good. However, their depth since their cup run, meh. And Carolina looks really well balanced. Freddie Anderson had a career year. I have no faith in playoff Freddie Anderson. However, he's not going to have the spotlight on him. Again, I apologize to Carolina Hurricanes fans. Outside of Carolina and Boston, not a lot of people are going to be watching this series, so maybe Freddie can hold it together between the pipes for this round. I just don't see... I see a world in which Boston wins. I just think that Carolina is really well balanced, and I think that Boston is on their last legs. But that first unit of their top players are just so good in the playoffs that it's very, very tough to go against them. But I'm gonna go with Carolina. All right, and then lastly, we've got the New York Rangers and the Pittsburgh Penguins. For whatever reason, I watched a ton of Rangers games. I do like to bet on hockey, and I watch a lot of games based on that. And for whatever reason, I bet a lot on the Rangers. They are carried by Shesterkin, and you can see that by Georgiev's numbers. They are going to be extremely good once Kakko and Lafreniere become real top 6 players. They just aren't yet, and they were dragged here. That being said, Shesterkin looks to be the best goaltender in the NHL instead of Vasilevsky, and like unbelievable how the Rangers go from Lundqvist to Shesterkin. Like you have no just like dead era of goaltending, so that's nice. But nonetheless, 2.49 goals against. If Shesterkin plays like he did in the regular season in the playoffs, like that is going to be tough because Pittsburgh, much like Washington, is just they're running on fumes. They have, Crosby is Crosby, Malkin okay, and Gensel too. You got to give Gensel credit and Letang, but again, it's their depth is just lacking from their cup runs. Not to mention, Pittsburgh eats the Rangers. So I'm going to go, again, I think Rangers fans, you guys are the loudest on social media, and for the most part, most annoying. I apologize, but it's just a fact. So again, don't be upset with my pick here. I think the Rangers are going to be extremely good soon, just not this year. You were carried by your goaltender, and if you argue otherwise, stop it. All right, Pittsburgh. Let's do in games. All right, Florida and Washington. The only issue with Florida is that they've never done it, okay? Haven't been out of the first round. Obviously, they have in the past, but like in this iteration of the Panthers. That makes me worried. I'm going to say 5. I hope they don't stumble. I really hope they don't stumble against Washington, because if they can rest and stay healthy, they are going to be really tough. All right, Carolina and Boston. I will say Carolina in 6 games. I think Boston will win 2. It's really going to come down to Carolina's goaltending. We'll see. Toronto and Tampa. Oh, my God. I really think Tampa wins this series. I'm going to will it into it. There is zero shot. Here is the thing. If the Leafs are going to win, it cannot be in 7 games, because if they go into 7 games against the Lightning, who have just won back-to-back Stanley Cups, it is going to be 4-0 in the first period. So I'm going to stick with the Leafs. I will say in 6 games, because like I said, if it goes to 7, I don't know. All right, Rangers and Penguins. Again, I think Shesterkin steals them a game or 2. I will say Penguins in 7. Like, I think this goes the distance, and the Rangers kind of surprise a little bit. I will say Penguins in 7. All right, that will give us this, which is a really weird playoff in the Eastern Conference. Florida and Toronto. I have said that once Toronto got out of the first round that they would go on a cup run, just because I think that, like MJ back against the Pistons, like, once he beat the Pistons, like, they just all rolled. They got confidence. Like, however, dude, the Panthers just look so good. I have to stick with the Panthers. Like, they look so good. But I hate the chalk picks. I really do. I hate the chalk picks. They've never done it. You want to know my honest take here? Again, this is for the video, and I'm going to stick with my word. I really think Tampa, like if we were to go Tampa here, I think Tampa beats Florida. But I will say Florida beats Toronto here. Carolina and Pittsburgh. I hate this because, like, again, this seems closer than it is. I will go... Pittsburgh can't do that. I'm scared to take Pittsburgh because there's a... No. I think they have one last run in them. Before Crosby, Malkin, just too old, Letang. That leaves us Pittsburgh and Florida. I hate how this ended up looking. Dude, Pittsburgh can't go to the... Pittsburgh cannot... Guys, I'm talking myself through this video. Pittsburgh can't go to the Stanley Cup. I don't, like, dude, I really think it's Tampa. Like, I honestly, no, you know what? It's fine. I will say Florida. Okay, I'm going to go Florida. I hate this. I really hate this. I don't like chalk, and I don't think it ever happens. Like, when's the last time 2 number 1 teams made it? Like, when was that, like, Detroit and Pittsburgh back in, like, 07 or 08? Like, when was the last time that 2 number 1s made it? Oh, man. I will take Colorado's experience. Oh, man, I don't know. Yeah, I will take Colorado's experience. Another number of goals scored in the final series. The rules. And there it is. Colorado Avalanche are your Stanley Cup champions. Again, roast me in the comments. That's fine. I really don't care. This is all opinion-based, and obviously I'm going to be wrong. But nonetheless, there it is. If you guys want to get involved, again, the link is down below. Thank you guys again for watching, and I will see you next time. Have a good one.